It's good to see you again, Ryan.
Good to be back.
Yeah, it's been
in my own office.
It's been a long time since we last talked. It's been 30 seconds.
It feels like only yesterday.
I know, even though it was two minutes ago. Where haven't we been canceled yet? Because I feel like this last string of filming, we've been canceled in so many different areas. Both political parties hate us. Everyone thinks I'm a Russian sympathizer. What else? Do we have any...
The Kriegsmarine fans already tuned out.
Yeah. Do we have any fans left? My grandmother, I think, is still watching.
Only because you made her.
I know. I feel bad. Okay. So today, let's get away from carriers and cruisers and stuff like that. Lately, now, this is an ongoing thing, and it has been since last year when we brought it up initially. But I wanted to talk about maritime history today.
Okay.
And I just heard every video player close. So now we're officially down to zero viewers. But I want to talk about maritime history today. And I think people's maybe lack of understanding or lack of interest. And again, I just mentioned the player closing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because obviously SS United States has been in the news a lot and has been spammed all over the internet, top, bottom, everything else, all the pages that we contribute to and everything. It seems like you can't go a single day without seeing a picture of that rusted ship. And I just had some thoughts on maritime history. And of course, I know you have your own thoughts and such. But I just feel like there just is not an appreciation for ships that aren't painted gray.
Certainly my preferred color for a ship.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like I love a good old Navy ship too, but just because it's not painted gray doesn't mean it's not important, or has its own story, or is sometimes even more important than a ship that's painted gray.
We definitely forget that the gray painted ships exist because of all of the other ships. They're here to...
The gray painted ships protect the non-gray ships.
They support them in their
Thank you, George
daily
Washington.
activities.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into maritime history. Do you want to roll the intro?
How do I do it? You've never let me do it before.
Just snap your fingers.
Did it work?
I think it did. Okay. Yes. So George Washington, there's a video. You go watch it. George Washington. Basically, we were tired of having all of our merchant ships robbed after the Revolution, and we were like, we need Navy coverage. 6 frigates. Here we come. Constitution. Let's do it. If
we didn't have a commercial interest, we would have never needed to build those ships.
No, but look where we are on the planet. Smack dab. We got ocean here, ocean there. You got to go by boat somewhere. So if the Navy obviously fights the battles, which are sexy, a lot of heroism, movies, everything, which we'll get to.
I can't wait for that one.
We'll get to the Navy movies. But it's the merchant ships, but it's the maritime fleet, non-Navy ships that are doing the work, which what makes the economy go, which is then why you have piracy and other things, which is why you need the Navy to protect the assets.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just don't feel like those ships get the love.
The day-to-day stuff is never as sexy as the one big battle. Like, there's a reason why the Coast Guard has combatant vessels too, but they're not given as much love as the gray hull Navy ships, because they're out there every day doing their law enforcement and search and rescue jobs and whatnot. And that's just not as sexy.
Oh man, too bad this didn't go off during the Navy movie episode. It's like Mr. Roberts,
Yeah.
Now hear this. uh, so um, so right. I mean, there's our newest.
Do you think I should get a palm tree for my office?
Yes, exactly. You need a little palm tree over there on the floor. There's that video of the Coast Guard chasing down that like narco sub,
Yeah.
and the guy like jumping on it and like opening the hatch and like
Yeah.
like dude, like they could have a gun, like you could open that hatch, like I could have blown your head off. Which is funny because the higher ups in the Coast Guard got all PO'd about that because they're like, dude, what are you doing? Like that could have been a bloodbath, But then of course the public, that video gets leaked and the public's like, effing awesome, dude, give them more money. So yeah, exactly. But I just think that the folks in the merchant marine out there doing these long voyages that to bring oil across goods to across oceans and everything else. Of course, then think about all the guys who died on like Liberty and Victory ships in World War II. If you actually want to assign a conflict to this, and we do have like Victory. We do have Victory ships as museum ships, so I think that's good. I don't think we'll ever see a super tanker museum ship. Probably a little on the unnecessary side of things.
I do want to memorialize the movie Waterworld.
Oh man, yeah, that's one of the movies we didn't consider for the Navy in the movies episode. So
because it's a merchant ship and not a Navy ship.
Yeah, because it's exactly. So one of the things with the United States, okay, is, and this is what I wanted to bring up, because when we did the episode about will there be future museum ships,
a lot of great comments on that episode.
We were talking about Navy museum ships.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, it kind of applies to really anything. Ships are expensive to maintain, especially from certain periods.
A lot of what we were talking about comes from the Navy authorizing NAVSEA to turn former Navy vessels over. We weren't talking about the mechanisms for civilian ships to be turned to museum ships.
Sure. But with that being said, I mean, the list of, oftentimes when you do have a museum ship that's not Navy, it's on a much smaller scale, like tugboats and maybe river boats and things of that nature. Would you not agree? Right.
Yeah, by and large. And there's a couple of great civilian service museum ships out there.
And then obviously you have Queen Mary. So here you have a ship which had a pre-war career, a wartime career, a post-war career, retired in the 60s, kind of bounced around, ultimately saved as a relatively intact piece, and then presented in Long Beach. By the time this episode comes out, I will have already done it, but I am staying aboard Queen Mary in May.
I visited her before, but I've never gotten to sleep on board.
So I'm really excited doing that, and because it has already happened, it was epic. It was wonderful. Okay, it was the highlight of my life. I have no idea, but I'm sure it'll be great. Well, because you also get like, if you stay on board, then the tours are cheaper, and like the restaurants and stuff like that. It's as a package. It's really appealing. I think that's the idea. But that brings me to, I think, the reason why I wanted to do this. So in July of last year, we did an episode about United States. Is this the end of the United States? That was before the election and everything. And that was a funny pun. We get it. Okay. But now that ship has dominated the internet with it moving from Philadelphia to Mobile, you're just reading through the comments and watching all the videos and everything. I want to get your take on this before I say anything else, because I feel like you have strong opinions as well about the whole.
I've never had strong opinions about anything.
It's such a lie.
I just don't know if there's a place for donut shops on battleships.
Yeah, but donut shops on board ex-ocean liners.
There's definitely a place for real fancy bakery on a ship like that.
Gotcha. But seriously though, like as a piece of maritime history, what are your thoughts on United States?
Yeah, so in the last video we talked about the Navy has a set of criteria for their ships that like, is there a president associated with them? Is there a Medal of Honor recipient associated with them? Are they the first of a class or like an innovative design? And I feel like those same criteria can be applied to civilian ships in a pretty similar way. And SS United States, lead ship of her class, engineering innovation.
Is the only ship of her class.
Connected to a tremendous number of famous people, movie stars, politicians, you name it. Even looking at the designers of the ship, folks like William Francis Gibbs,
and then carrying like his legacy,
which
is incredible.
Yeah, huge, with both Navy and civilian designs, maritime in general. So any one of those criteria would be valid to put that ship on a list to be saved. And the fact that she has so many of them.
So full disclosure to the audience, you already know this, but I'm the author of the new Naval History Special Edition for the United States.
And by the time this airs, you'll have finished writing it, right?
No, by the time this airs, I will have written some of it. Okay. So this ship, I really fell in love with this ship over the last, I would say, 3 years. And Rick and I asked Rick to do that United States episode that he did, which came out last year. He did a great job with that video, and a lot of people have seen it, and I really do like it. It's hard for me to imagine. And so knowing you, being in this business, before anyone freaks out, I understand that ship is gutted. I understand that it's like, it would be an incredible task and phenomenally expensive to rehab the entire ship and then build an entire business around it in order to save it and for it to be viable, right? So please save your comments about that. Like, I get it, and I understand that probably better than a lot of people.
And the average person,
okay? So I'm not going to sit here and say, we just need to save the United States, and then just period, and then with no, when we did the last episode on it, we said, perhaps if you had gotten a big enough investor and you set it up as a hotel, something like that, and if you could find, if there was a viable business plan, okay. But I'm talking just on the artifact alone. So just put a pin in the whole, it needs to be financially viable, to be saved. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up was because there's a lot of, the comments that I see are either it's one or two things. It's, we need to save the ship. Cool story. How are you going to do that? No idea.
Yeah.
But then it's the other side. It's just scrap that mother effer so we don't have to listen to this anymore.
Yeah, she's been sitting there for so long. Nobody's done anything. I'm tired of hearing about her.
I'm like, I hope someone come and bulldozes your house. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't understand the lack of appreciation for the artifact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If the Air and Space Museum by my house, Udvar Hazy, with the Enola Gay and Space Shuttle Discovery, blah 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 blah, was we're having financial troubles, and one of two options, bulldoze the building with all the artifacts in it, or come up with a way of saving it, which then saves the artifacts. All of y'all are advocating for bulldozing the building.
So you don't have to hear about the.
So you don't have to hear about it. You know what I mean? And so that's my biggest issue, is I've seen a lot of people get really emotional for saving gray-hulled ships that have no significance, right? I mean, and then you have this which is a black hull ship, but this ship, which actually is historically significant and is a real piece, a unique piece, not like we built 20 of them and here's the last one. It's one and done. Um, one of the largest ships ever built in this country, a testament to U.S. shipbuilding. Both in terms of naval shipbuilding, because she was built in Newport News, right over top of the blocks where the USS United States was canceled. Truman. No, sorry, I keep saying that. But and is a real sort of testament again to post-war American industry and ingenuity and everything. And then again, the legacy of Gibbs and the fact that it's the fastest ocean liner in the world by a lot. I mean,
not even close. But we've preserved a ton of World War II stuff. And then that World War II generation is going away. We've got very little of that post-war, America at its peak. We have just pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps from the Great Depression, from a world war, and now we're helping other countries rebuild themselves. That is one of the greatest periods in definitely American history, arguably world history, and we don't memorialize it at all.
And even though by the time we like to think of a lot of people immigrating to the United States pre-war, but immigration post-war was still a huge thing too. People are like, this whole continent is effed up over here. Time to go to the U.S. They seem to got money.
They don't get bombed every 20 years in a world war.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's a lot of people who came across on all those ocean, not just the United States, but all those ocean liners that were put back into service after the war, but then also including United States lines and America and United States. And I just feel like there isn't that much out there on that story. I still think that Queen Mary is misplaced in Long Beach. I still think that ship would do better in a port city that had that history, like a New York, Southampton.
Taking Queen Mary back to England,
hey, better than California. We've already been canceled in California because of another episode, so I don't care.
Did I say something bad about the prune barge?
No, I said something about California. I can't remember. Whatever. Anyway,
we don't do enough to talk about the immigrant story in this country, and that is a maritime story for much of this country's history, from the first colonists who come over here to how my family got here.
All the way from Italy.
We don't talk enough about how immigration is one of the things that makes this country so great.
And I think, the ocean liners in particular, we talk about tugboats and riverboats and things like that, because they're usually small and cheap, and if you can have a museum, it's
a couple of folks can come together and save one of those ships.
Yeah, a ship the size of the United States, something that's bigger than this ship, is obviously incredible. That's the amount of money. Obviously, you're fully aware of that, but the amount of money that keeps even the lights on here. I mean, to think that, and this ship was turned over relatively intact. To think that you've got this gutted hulk that needs, full exterior, interior, whole 9 yards. And even if you sectioned off most of it and just rebuilt some spaces, you know what I mean? But still, what's the point of having such a large ship that is only like 3 compartments are open? I don't know. It doesn't sit right. So again, there's a lot of reasons why United States would never have worked as a museum ship.
And we should probably mention that if you're getting on and people are saying, oh, she needs to be saved, and you're arguing, well, that's going to be difficult because of this, this, and this, that's fine. That's great. If you're just like, I'm tired of hearing about this, that's where we got a problem with.
Yeah, it's just there's so much history there. That ship means so much to a lot of people. And that's what sort of irked me, was this idea that Like, it just needs to go away because I'm tired of hearing about it, you know?
That's a problem.
And I'm like, let's sync this because I'm tired of hearing you talk on the internet. Like, what? Like, how does that make sense?
Yeah, or
You know?
just don't go to YouTube at night when we're posting these videos, and you won't
Yeah.
have to hear about it. Yeah, no, that's so much of what's difficult in this country right now is that I don't care about what you're going through. You don't care what I'm going through. I say we should do this. You just like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about this or that or politics anymore, religion or
The issue too, of course, is that like we'll never build a ship like that again.
No.
You know what I mean?
That
like
type of ship is done.
Yeah, I know. And so, but even something that size, like the only ships that size we're building as a country are the super carriers that we just talked about, you know, last episode that may or may not have had their time in the sun, you know?
And you know, if any other country built super carriers up to the standards that the Navy imposes, we probably wouldn't be building those in Norfolk either.
Mm-hmm. And so I really do have a problem with the way that the United States was handled. It's not to say anything negative about the Conservancy themselves. Obviously, it's a huge financial endeavor to have rehabbed that ship. That doesn't mean I don't think it would have been impossible. Again, I think that, you know, with the right, if the problem is that they were too lax about it over such a long period of time. I think because certain companies came in, were like, well, maybe we could buy it to reuse it literally as a ship, like actually get it moving again. Whereas perhaps had they gone into it from the very beginning, knowing, you know what, like this is basically 1940s era battleship technology, you know, no one's going to really want to operate this. You know, you don't have the crew, the techniques, whatever, the parts to put the ship back into service. We really just need to find a buyer who can install it into New York City, you know, refit an interior and do that. And so I feel like if that had been the mission from day one, you could have gotten maybe slightly further down that track versus constantly bouncing back and forth between various interested parties over the years, and then eventually you get 30 years later and then nothing more has happened.
Yeah, at a certain point, the ship has deteriorated so long without stuff going on that there's nothing that can be done. I don't think we reached that point yet, which is part of what upsets me. That
I know
we're throwing in the
and
towel.
And that's the thing. You're one of the few people who has been on that ship. You know, been close to it. I haven't been on it, which is really that tweaks me now. I have to fly to Mobile and like sneak my way on board. But you then have not only been on it, but then you can look at the material condition with your experience on this ship and say, wow, you know, this thing looks bad on the outside, but actually it's kind of peachy on the inside.
My outlook about that ship and her future really changed when I went on board her, and I wasn't expecting it to. I didn't want it to, because I've been saying for a while, no, this thing's old, there's nothing on the inside, it looks rusty, I'm tired of hearing about her. And then I went on board, I was like, wow, this ship can still serve this country.
It's just,
I wish more people had the opportunity to get on board her.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's for folks like us that are into maritime stuff, it is a religious experience. It converts you to believing that something can be done for that ship.
As Rick says in the video, something that big is hard to kill, you know? And I think that in many ways that's the truth. I think something that big sort of takes on its own sort of quality. And regardless if, it is gutted and yeah, it does need a paint job, you know, but if it's not a rusty mess in terms of being full of holes, you know, that's where a lot of the work and money goes in. I mean, you just had, dry docking yourself. You know? I mean, that's metal work, versus scraping rust and repainting is a completely different ballgame than patching large, Texas, having to rebuild whole sections of hull.
But the fact that there was a will to do that with Texas, and there isn't one for this
and
other great ship.
And what I think is interesting is, so in that ship, when that ship was being finished,
Mhm.
the Navy funded part of that ship's construction because of Queen Mary.
Yeah.
They were like, we need ocean liners to move people, just like the Brits had with Cunard and White Star and stuff like that. So the Navy was like, cool, we just funded this like super fast ship. You know, I want to use my new toy. Screw the civilians. So the Korean War is happening. So they're like, give us that. It's not even done yet, and they've already they've already called it up, so to speak. And then the Army was like, I think we're good. Like we don't like we're making it work right now with what we got. So then she was able to be finished and fitted out as the ocean liner she was supposed to be. But
And I'd never heard that story before I saw the video that Rick made.
But therein lies a point that I've been trying to make. Had she served as that troop transport for like 6 months, let's just say, and then came back, got painted black, white, and red, fitted out then as the ocean liner, and then served. That period in Battleship Gray, right? Would that Navy experience would that have given her the support of all the gray-hulled people around here who don't seem to give a crap? Like Queen Mary.
There's a strong argument to be made that would be the case.
And then suddenly it's a whole different animal.
So much of Queen Mary's story is around her wartime service, which at the end of the day is a fraction of her total career.
Right. You know? And so that's my issue. It's like, so if the ship had seen that Korean War service, maybe just a little bit of it, would it have garnered the support that would have eventually saved the ship? So instead of being mothballed by the Navy for so long, and then sold to that immigrant who then sent it to Ukraine to have it gutted, like, could there have been a different path because of support earlier on that would have then sent it down the Queen Mary direction versus the direction that it ultimately ended up in? Because when the Navy took possession after United States lines collapsed, the Navy was like, crap, now I got this ocean liner that I really don't want, or don't need anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna try to wipe my hands with it. So they kind of like just sold it as quickly as they could.
Exactly. They don't have the funding for the ships that they have.
Right.
They don't have the funding to keep something nearly the size of a super carrier sitting around.
Had she proven herself in Korea, maybe the Navy would have given it that second thought. Because even Layman thought about it too. For a moment there, he was like, that's a Navy asset that I wouldn't mind reactivating. Because at the end of the day, you have a nearly 1,000-foot long hull that can do 40 knots. That's an incredible asset.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we need a troop transport like that.
Sure.
But a hospital ship, all the natural disasters that we see, and the Navy is one of the premier organizations that first responds to that. Yeah, go the Britannic route. Avoid the mines.
Britannic is just like United States in that it's under construction, almost done. It gets then White Star or Cunard White Star gets called up and goes, hey, since we subsidize construction of that, we need this as a hospital ship. Okay, fine.
So her to be able to do 40 knots from here to Puerto Rico or wherever the next thing is, and then she's got medical facilities on board. She's got all sorts of room for housing all these people who are displaced. You can bring on board, and they're getting good treatment while their homes are being rebuilt. She's got tremendous cargo carrying capability, so you can just roll in with all the supplies you need, and you're not taking the gray hulls that could be out there training or doing their primary mission.
And you could have, I know this is, now we're getting down the what if, but you could have refitted some of the superstructure. You could have welded on helicopter landing pads.
Oh yeah, Fantail would have needed a landing pad or something like that.
So I'm saying reconstruction would have occurred. Because remember, Britannic comes out of the shipyard, and she's got all those big gantries, stuff like that, with lifeboats just everywhere. Because again, everyone's paranoid about Titanic and what have you. So she comes out, a lot different than her earlier sisters.
Did I tell you that Kobe came out with a Britannic kit?
No, you didn't.
I have,
Oh, you may have.
I have one in my garage. I haven't had a chance to build it yet.
You got all kinds of stuff. Okay.
But they same scale as the Titanic kit they came out with.
1,350.
I think these are both like 1,700.
Oh, so they're even smaller versions.
Yeah, yeah. Although they're about to come out with another 1,300 Titanic with more detail. But yeah, so I have both now. I can build them and see the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. This is a tangent, but one of my favorite things is that the Lego Titanic that you and I will build, or by the time this episode comes out, we will have already built it and you will have already seen it. But for the sake of today, the Lego Titanic that we have built in the future, in the past, you can get people have made alternate instruction versions of those.
So like reskin it.
So you can build it into a hospital ship Britannic or a World War One, or you can build it into Olympic or World War One dazzle camouflage. And they've like brick built the camera, like people are insane. But anyway, so that's the kind of stuff that's interesting.
So we're not building ours based on the real instructions, right?
Yes, we are.
Oh.
I've already got some modifications that you'll have seen. Whatever. So I think that, so again, United States, had she served in Korea initially, before becoming the ocean liner, I have a strong sense that might have saved her from this fate that is currently, she's awaiting.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe that Navy service in the 50s would have, like you said, convinced maybe laymen in the 80s to do a high-speed hospital transport or something the Navy would have used. And then just like this ship, that Navy-funded refit in the 80s would have made her salvageable as a museum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the fact that these ships were refit and then used just a little bit and then preserved in this condition made that so much easier for these museums than, for instance, like maybe a World War II battleship and then, seeing coming out of mothballs for 20 years and then having to work through those various issues,
Yeah, no, the Iowa class are way more complete as museum ships than those ones that were mothballed and had a lot of their stuff taken, in some cases, by Iowa class battleships. We actually probably took most of our parts from other Iowa class battleships since we were brought back first each time.
You bastard.
Yeah, which then meant they had to go and find theirs on these other museum ships.
So the reason why Missouri, can you understand that? Missouri.
You have a weird dialect.
Okay. Maybe they have a donut shop because they had to.
Is that how you pronounce it down in Virginia?
There's an I on the end of that word, right? Missouri.
Eyes make sounds.
Oh, Lord. Okay, we get it. Anyway. So, okay. Everyone is clicked off. So at this point, we're just talking to each other, which is the case. So I'm perfectly fine with this. So that brings me back full circle to this idea that because United States never wore gray paint and carried United States or other troops or served the Navy in some way,
never went in harm's way,
that people just don't give two craps about her, even though all the reasons why we talked, size, what she represented, the immigrants she did carry, the designer, his legacy, all of that seems to just out the window because she has a black hull with some white accent,
Yeah, and I think it's largely because people don't know that she meets all those criteria. Because she's not gray, they haven't studied her history in the first place to realize that she is as significant as just about any other gray hull that's been saved. Even
like the parts sharing with battleships. And this is the part, and I mentioned this to you earlier, and I have to go into the archives and do this, and I'm going to for my special edition that we talked about.
Yeah.
But that Project D battleship design, that treaty battleship that Gibbs and Cox design that sketched up
Yeah.
for the Russians when they rejected the battle carrier ultimately. Um, that has United States-esque lines. You know what I mean? It seems that Gibbs was really thinking about that hull form, that shape, those funnels. Like that was on his head in the 30s, you know, and he finally got the Navy. He finally got to see that dream built, um, only because the Navy and the fact that United States lines was subsidized by the U.S. government.
Those oversized funnels and that really narrow bow to full stern it really sells me on this theory, and I can't wait to see what your research turns up to prove or disprove it.
And that, so she's an ocean liner, but there's so much battleship in her, and like literally like engines. You know what I mean? I you've seen her engine room, and and we've been downstairs here. You know, and then think about the post-war, like the Navy, like the crew. You know, you had crew that had fought in World War II, who had learned on ships like this, and then were handpicked by United States lines to serve on board that ship because they had the experience with the engines and the type and the size and everything. And it's really hard to, like, you know, like I said, there's some ships that I can understand, but I don't understand the hate for her. You know.
Yeah, and I feel like the crew plays a part in why we preserve gray-hulled ships. Serving in the military, serving. It's an act of service as opposed to a career for a merchant mariner, which really doesn't make much sense when you think about it, especially those merchant mariners who served in wartime.
I know. Oh, Lord.
And don't get half the recognition that they deserve.
So, but with that being said, though, given the amount of veterans that more than likely served aboard the United States, in terms of crew, engineering, you know, people, whole nine yards, not necessarily like the stewards and the people who, you know, like, but the actual people who made the ship function, right? I can only imagine that the overwhelming majority were more than likely World War II veterans who had served aboard large capital ships, you know.
Yeah, shoot, and the ones who weren't like Navy veterans had been in harm's way in the Merchant Marine.
Yeah, right. There's only so many people that you can pull from, and especially in that time period in the early 50s. Well, you know, World War II wasn't that far away.
Yeah, your officers, your experienced guys, they have all served in that war in one capacity or another.
And so that just sort of brings me full circle here to, again, that's why I feel very strongly about SS United States, and I feel like she gets I think that a ship that size, something that's moving, like especially when, you know, when you're towed away, something that size that's moving doesn't happen every day. I mean, think about when this ship went to dry dock. That's a spectacle, you know. So people posting videos and their thoughts and feelings and stuff like that, and then just to like take a crap on them, for like lack of a better word, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't think that ship deserves the hate, and I understand that the situation is delicate, but I think that maritime history in general is underserved, and
haters, you won. She's gonna go away. Like, you don't have to gloat for the next 6 months or 8 months or however long it takes for that to happen.
Yeah. So, and on the average day, I mean, she sat there for how long? You know, you never heard anything, you know?
Yeah.
Suddenly you see a couple of videos posted online and it's like, I need that thing melted down into a new Ford Fiesta, you know? They don't even make that anymore, but whatever.
My first car was a Ford Fiesta.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Her name was Scarlett. She was bright red.
Okay. Well, you know.
Had it for 51 weeks before it completely broke down. I had to replace it.
51 weeks. Okay, I guess you could just round up to saying a year.
Didn't even make it a full year.
That's unfortunate. Poor Scarlett. Poor United States. Well, would you like to say anything more about United or maritime history? I think this has been the vent episode. I don't think anyone's actually watching, so.
Good, then they won't have to watch me cry.
I know. When you did that live stream of her going underneath the bridge. It was just so heartbreaking. And everyone in the comments were like, oh my God, we're crying with you, Ryan. I was at work. I was at work watching that, you know, and people were like, Jack, what's wrong? I'm like, shut up! Close the door.
Is your dog okay? Is your mom okay?
Yeah.
Why are you
like my ship's being towed away? Anyway, so okay, all right. Well, thanks, Ryan. Do you have anything more to add as Hintsa director? Support local maritime museums.
Yeah. It happened to the United States. It's happened to other ships. It could happen even to the ones that we've saved so far.
Yeah.
So the support of them is the only thing that keeps them going. If you're not interested, if you're not coming out, if you're not donating, then they're gone. Yeah.
And just one final point, and we talked about this in the museum ship episode, and I'd seen this comment a few times online, but it was, okay, so donate your time, donate your money, save the museum ships. But if these ships, no matter how much time and money you invest, will eventually rust out, people were making the point that it's a losing battle no matter what. And then so it's like, why bother? And I'm like, wow, then why bother life?
Yeah,
you know
you're going to die one day.
Like life is a terminal illness.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If you want to pass your values, the values of your grandparents' generation or whatnot, down to the next generation, you've got to preserve these things which will outlast the people.
Yeah, exactly. So, and with that, we will call this one here. Thank you very much for watching, those who survived to the very end. Let us know down below how you think about the United States. Thanks, Brian.
I'm just too sad.
I know.